Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. Really quickly, as you can tell, I am doing only Legends of Tomorrow for this review. You might be asking yourself, well, it's like, where's Arrow? Well, Arrow is being packaged with all the other parts of the Elseworld crossover and will be going up Wednesday. So just know that this is only Legends, so in case you were curious where Arrow was. But moving on to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legends, a fantastic episode. Holy crap, was this so good. I love everything about, like, obviously we see what happens, like these new alternate realities because of their need to try and, like, you know, Constantine trying not to send Desmond to hell like he does in the original timeline, and you have Charlie trying to keep her abilities. I love it. They end up eventually turning Zari back into a human, which also the fact of the matter is that she's like a cat, and it's so adorable because like you see at points where she kind of like is almost sympathetic putting a paw there. She's working the computer with her paw. It's like it's so cute and adorable. It's like, oh my god. And even the fact is Charlie, not just Charlie, apparently Constantine too, but maybe it just has something to do with Constantine being magical, and the fact of the matter is it's like, oh yeah, I can communicate with anything. Maybe the same thing applies to Charlie. Who knows? They don't bother. Right, I'm stupid. Like, the fact of the matter is they can understand different languages and stuff like that, just because I'd assume it applies to the jump ship, but we definitely know it applies to Gideon, so I thought that was kind of pretty nice. That's kind of my justification for it. Maybe, you know, just simply overthinking it, but I love it. At first, it's like, you know, they turn Zari back and she's like, it's because of you dicks I got turned into a cat for so long. And I love Mona overheard everything. It's like, but please don't turn me to a cat. And Constantine's like, I didn't turn her a cat, turned her back into a cat that she was transformed into. And Mona's like, oh, well, if you did turn me into something, it'd be like this. You know what? Go ahead and do it. I'm like, she's so in love with the whole situation. But I'm completely skipping over the fact is we have Nate, Ray, and Mick. Apparently they're killing magical creatures because they end up running into a leprechaun, which Charlie knew from the Hell World. End up blasting it, and they get little A-team opening, and then like you have Garima and Mick killing a mystical creature, and Mick kind of turns to the camera and Lori raises his eyebrows. I'm like, what? That's so good. I love that, dude. That was so awesome. They are the custodians of the chronology, which is like, wow. So, because it turns out, oh, Sarah died in this universe, in this timeline, because Constantine wasn't there. He wasn't there to help them with the whole unicorn situation, and it killed Sarah. They showed up, blasted the unicorn, it exploded into colorful bits, and it's like, yeah, but Zari was still a cat. So I was like, okay, what's up with that? And then it's like, oh, because it turns out in this timeline now, the boys, Nate, Mick, and Rory were killed by the fairy godmother, and then you had to solve that situation. You had Charlie disguising herself as the fairy godmother and is telling Prudence, oh, you have to eat broccoli, you go to church and this and that, eat the broccoli, and that was enough. It's like there's that heartfelt moment. It's so funny because when you think about it, it's like Zari had that heart-to-heart with Prudence, and that solved the issue, but all it took was this situation to be like, oh, these are rules you have to live by. Oh, you don't like that? Then you have to cut ties with our bond and stuff like that. I was like, that's such a small, interesting detail. I also completely skipped over the fact is in the timeline where Sarah died, we had Ava go completely like almost kind of emo a little. She dyed her hair black and she was depressed. That's also the timeline where everyone killed each other. Like the custodians of the chronology ended up killing the Time Bureau people, and it's like, jeez. That was interesting. I was hoping Mona was able to go with them, but she was just trying to give them any help. But I wish she would have been able to go along on an adventure, but it's kind of like, nah, probably the moment they changed things, she kind of went back to her original place in time. Because it's like, yeah, like her friend that ended up escaping in the original time, like it was killed by the custodians because, you know, turned them into a rug and everything like that. And then after saving the boys, and well, the timeline where the boys had died, we had the girls. We had Ava, Sarah, and Gideon, which I love that every time we're seeing Gideon, she keeps being different because she's just the floating head before, but now in these alternate timelines, she's got a full body. One version of her is just like a hologram version of herself, which is like, whoa, that's awesome. And then like apparently in the timeline where they were the sirens of space-time, which I'm wondering, like, is that supposed to be kind of referencing like the sirens from like DC Comics? I'd assume so, because it's just kind of coincidental that you would just do that. I mean, it's not like DC has like a patent on the word sirens or anything, but that's what I assumed to. I still don't even know what that whole situation is about, like the sirens and stuff like that, because it's popped up in Gotham. I know it's going to be a thing in the DC movies as well, but like I guess it seemed like it might be a team of villains and heroes kind of put together, kind of similar to the Legends in regard, because I know Harley's part of it. I think Catwoman's part of it, but maybe Batgirl is too, potentially. I don't know that much about it, like the whole siren situation, but nevertheless, I thought that was kind of interesting. They were themed after Charlie's Angels. I was like, that's so good. And Hank is their Charlie. He's like, good morning, sirens. Good morning, Hank. It's like, what? And the little detail I thought was so interesting. It's like each one of them is getting a gun. Sarah gets Mick's gun. I would have expected out of anyone she'd get Snarton's gun, considering the fact that they had the relationship they did, but I guess it fits her personality more. I guess it's also fitting with the fact is that her and Mick are pretty cool now, like especially like where their relationship is. Ava had Snart's gun, and Gideon had Rip's pistol. I was like, that's nice little details I thought was kind of pretty nice. Also, the fact is that Gideon could smell shapeshifter pheromones. I love that, because even like Charlie is like, what the hell is up with you people and white whales? The custodians call shapeshifter a white whale. You guys are calling me a white whale. It's like, what is up with this situation? And so it's that thing of constantly changing the timeline, trying to fix things. There was one timeline where Ava had died. There was another timeline where Hank and Nate had died by a garden gnome. There was another one where Gary had died. And you had Charlie kind of pause for a second. She's like, and this is a timeline I might be able to live. All right, never mind. Go back. And goes into a timeline where it's like, hey, everyone's still alive. All the while, I am surprised you were able to do this so much. Maybe things work a little bit differently, just because it's like, I'm about to say Larry. Jeez, Barry created Flashpoint and almost broke a timeline. I guess the Legends are kind of allowed to break time because they've broken it multiple times in worse ways than Barry technically has. I mean, he's fractured a timeline by creating Flashpoint, and if he kept doing it, he would have done more damage. But it's like, the Legends kind of get a free pass of that, because it's like, but what about the timeline? I guess, like, but I mean, obviously it was taking a toll on Constantine, because every new timeline was adding more and more to his jumbled head and everything. So I can't believe I let it slip my mind too. Skipping over the timeline where they were puppets. That was like, oh my god, DC's Puppets of Tomorrow. I was like, this is so amazing. And it's like, oh, the lesson of the day was teamwork and the number 3. And we learned about Napoleon today. And it's like, what? Well, that's because Mick ended up joining forces with the fairy godmother. I wonder how they convinced that situation not to play out the way it did. That was so interesting. I was like, and the fact is that I guess they go robbing together because like the fairy godmother is locked and loaded. I was like, this episode is so freaking good, dude. And you have Charlie trying to pretend to be different people at different points in time, and just even trying to convince Constantine is like, nah, come on, we can do it, because she wants to keep her powers and everything, because for her powers aren't just like, they're kind of a part of who she is. Also, it's so interesting, like, she had brought that up before, but it seemed like she has a really strong healing factor, because the fact of the matter is she got stabbed by Garima, ended up getting back up the moment she shifted back to look like a Maya, because she had talked about it every time, like it's almost like she's reborn every time when she shapeshifts. So I guess that kind of kicks into healing factor, but it's later on when Sarah snaps her neck, which was pretty brutal. It seemed like she shifted, but maybe she shifted part of her body enough to kind of repair her neck. I don't know. It seemed like she came back from a lot of stuff, because like Sarah shot her at one point and she was like, ow, and then heals herself. So it's like natural. Like, I think, all she has to do is shapeshift. Any part of her that's damaged will just heal. So I don't think she has to do a full-blown shapeshift just to recover and everything like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I also love it being like a thing of like, every timeline we go to, you're all about killing mystical creatures. And I was like, yeah, I started noticing that as a theme too. And it's like, the reason why is because Constantine never went with them. not only did they go after wanting to take down all these magical creatures for revenge, because each time like some member of the team ended up dying, it's because Charlie wasn't there to convince them magical creatures can be something other. Like, obviously things probably wouldn't be as brutal, maybe. I don't know. I don't think that Legends would be as much assholes about it, but to be fair, their only experience with magical creatures in this particular case were a dragon as well as mollusk. So that would probably kind of taint your image of all like supernatural creatures to a certain extent, because it's like, oh, everything that came out was evil. Charlie kind of gave them a different perspective to look like, oh, maybe there is more to this. At the very least, it made them hesitant and made them think, and that's kind of where we are. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, because Charlie didn't realize, like, you know, because like her and Constantine were trying to do everything they could to have what they wanted, and you have Constantine trying to undo everything. And that whole situation with Desmond, I like him like trying to explain it without telling him the whole time travel aspect. And he's like, well, it's this, this, and this. But he's like, yeah, that me that's up there, that was a me from a long time ago. I'm older, I'm wiser now. And it's like, well, in the grand scheme of things, all the timelines that you've changed and going through it, that probably has been a very long time. And so I thought that was just interestingly done. And they, like, while, you know, Charlie was about to fight Sarah, you know, Constantine fixed the timeline and made it so that him and Desmond got together, because it's like, because Desmond's like, yeah, like, you have to be a fool to not get into a relationship with John and Constantine and not know that things are going to be a little rocky. I also love, I forgot to talk about it, was like the custodians. It's like, oh yeah, Oliver Queen, Barry Allen, and Cara Zor-El sent you a message about some stuff going down. It's like, it must be like a crossover thing or something. I'm like, shut up, I love it. Because, like, as we know, like, the Legends aren't involved in this. I doubt it. I mean, this is kind of their way of being like, oh, no, we're not involved with this crossover. I thought that was, it didn't even cross my mind to think that they would say anything about it, but I love that. But, I thought it was kind of neat. Like I said, it's kind of nice to kind of have that, like, relationship aspect when it comes to Constantine. I thought that was kind of pretty dope. Like the whole him and Desmond situation. So, but I love it. Like when that finally goes through, the timeline reverts back to its original state, and then Charlie, who's about to get kicked by Sarah, goes back to being Mike the Spike inside the puppet of Professor Stein. Side note, I finally remember where I was like, where did that come from? It's like, right, Leo from Earth 52. He, like, that was his way of helping Mick get over the loss of Stein. I completely forgot about it. I think it was like last week. I forgot. I think it was probably The Flash when I saw it. Like, you know, like I saw Firestorm there, and I saw Leo. I think that's when it, you know, on Earth 90, like the little thing at the end of every episode last, kind of setting up the whole crossover Elseworlds situation. That kind of finally clicked in my head. It's like, right, that's where the puppet came from. I guess they just kept it the entire time. I guess Leo never took it. I guess it was just kind of their way of, which I guess that makes that whole situation even more mortifying, because it was meant to help them get over the loss of Stein, and now it's like that puppet is being used to try and kill them. But luckily they take it down. And I love the moment the trio get back, they're like, oh no, they're puppets again. Oh wait, oh no, everything's good. It's all good, because they didn't know about the puppet situation on everything. So it's like, I guess we won't get to see Gideon like that in any shape or form, like having maybe later on she'll get an upgrade where she gets at least a hologram version. Maybe in some potential shape or form, maybe we can get her as hard drive, which that's so interesting. I also love that when the siren situation, Ava was known as Roundhouse. That was a nice little detail and situation on its own. It was, this episode was just so much fun. Legends it's so good. It's stupidly good. And I don't mean stupidly good in a bad way. Of just like, they just have so much fun, and I love it. The show is just so amazing. And, you know, you had Ava reading Mick's book, An Erotic Space Odyssey, and then Mick is making snickerdoodles with Ava's recipe, and it's like, yeah, look at them, they're bonding. That's so awesome. That's so amazing. That's so good. Because I was wondering about that. So it's like, hey, everything's kind of coming together on many different fronts, because we have Zari and Charlie bonding too. Because it's so interesting, because all of this is happening Because let's not forget, it didn't come up too much, but it's like, let's not forget, Zari's literally in the same situation as him. She has a life that she wished she could change things for, but she knows she can't because it will undo so much, and it's a complicated mess, time travel and stuff like that, and just the consequences of doing it. There's still no current loophole around it, but it's kind of like, no, we'll find a way around this whole situation. But it was so interesting because Charlie pointed out, she's like, did you ever think, like, I kept reverting back to this form as your friend Amaya? It's because she's been with a whole bunch of crews before, but she actually liked this group. So I think it's the form she had when she first met them. That's why, and that kind of made me think about something. It's like, the fact is, that is the form. Like, at no point in time did she ever go back to the form that she had, like, when they first actually met her. But I get, because this is the form she had when she joined, but it's like, because I'm sure the first form she had as Charlie, that wasn't her real form. Well, I'm sure her name was probably still Charlie, but it probably won't be until the end of the series that we finally get to see what she really looks like. It might be a thing that she shapeshifted so much over all the years that she's been alive, because she's reborn every time, so she has immortality, so there's no telling how old she actually is. She might not even remember what she originally looked like anymore. Like, I doubt that was her original form, because it is kind of interesting, because it's like at any point in time you could have just cut back, but you went back to being a Maya. I wonder why, and it's like, oh, that's why. So, I think it's kind of like a nice little wink and nudge reason for, like, making that happen, so. But you have Constantine telling Sarah his story, but she's like, the fact of the matter is, like, we got your back, It's like, the legends have a tendency to kind of drive straight forward into these type of situations, and Neuron is going to come after us and try to win by very despicable means. And it turns out, like, oh, Hank, that whole situation, Neuron is behind that. I guess Neuron's trying to build up an army, and I guess if he gets an army of mystical creatures under his control, he can kill humans and gather souls like that. That seems like that's his ultimate goal. So that's interesting. I was wondering about, like, how that whole Hank situation would kind of play out the way it does, and interestingly enough, it plays out like that. I'm curious to see the continuation, because let's not forget where we left off Mona in this timeline, like her buddy, potentially more, left off. Let's not forget that Gary's still under the impression that she has a thing for him, and Nate's kind of under that impression too. So there is a lot with all of that, but like I said, a fantastic episode. The show, it continues to be so much fun, but I'm so interested to see where all this goes going forward, because they've got a target in mind when it comes to all of this. Neuron is, stepping up to be the main antagonist of all of this, and I'm curious to see how that all kind of ends up playing out. Sadly, we will be waiting a little while. The show will not be returning for a very, very long time, and that is in April. The date I saw on the internet, I looked in one spot, it said April 16th, so I don't know how accurate that is. It's just one spot that said that. Everywhere else I saw was like April, just 2019, so we'll see. But do note, like, in that time frame, like, some stuff is shifting around when it comes to the CW scheduling, because, like, apparently Black Lightning is going to be taking Legends' spot at some point in time in the near future. Just things kind of moving around, so just keep that in mind. It's always crazy because we always have to wait a while when it comes to Legends, because, like, Legends, I feel like, is the one that kind of gets moved around the most amongst all the show. I mean, it is literally the one that's had so far the most scheduled moves. But nevertheless, I'm very interested to see where the next episode takes us in this crazy story. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.